Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I were aspiring writers, but we never actually took the time to sit down and write.
Exactly. So, to get our butts in a seat and our hands on a pen, we are issuing a challenge. Each week we sit down for 30 minutes and write a complete short story, using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read a story sent in, written by you wonderful listeners, and then we talk about stories sent in by the rest of y'all.
100% on the mark. Hey, we're simply here to help you do the right thing.
A doof media production. So I have 2 anecdotes to start off.
2 of them.
Just to kick things going. One is actually writing related, so I'll start off with that one, which is so I was applying for jobs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, truly. And this one was asking for a lot of like writing tests. Like it was asking me to answer like special questions. It was like really quirky and whatever. Anyway, one of the ones near the end, it asks me to write a story under the length of a tweet. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Which is a bit hard, but it was okay. I can work with this. Yeah, it's not too bad. It was like, you know what? I'm gonna go a little bit meta. I'm gonna do Hemingway's 6-word story, right? And I'm gonna play with it a little bit, right? And so I spent a while thinking about it. But you know his 6-word story, right? Most people have heard of it. It's the one that goes, "For sale, baby shoes never worn," which is so tragic because it implies there was a miscarriage, right? Or something like that. It's horrible. And so I was going to play on it, and I asked a friend to ask if this was okay, because I'm playing off of, about a baby death, and so I'm wondering, like, is this acceptable? But what I ended up writing was, not for sale, new kicks, super sick, you can't have them. Or something like that.
Okay,
like they're mine. And then the idea, because it was like a marketing agency, the idea is that like, oh, you would put your shoes, and then people would want to buy them because it's funny, but also you're playing off of a dead baby story, so maybe it wouldn't be that good. Anyway, so it took a long time to write that, and then I hit enter. I was like, hell yeah, got a good one. And then it just asked me to write another story, and I was like, fuck.
What? The second one won't be special.
Exactly. So it took a long time. I wrote a story. It was not as meta as the first one. And then the next question was, do a 3-minute video talking and explaining why you're so good and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, that's a whole thing.
That's a lot. So
I didn't do it. The other anecdote, this is Alexandra time to talk. So I started HRT recently. I think I told you this, right? I don't know how much I talked about on the podcast, but that's cool. But one thing that they don't tell you in school, in driving class, when you're in the transgender, I was like trying to think of a transformer for like driving, because cars, and then anyway. Just kind of picture like a funny joke there. Anyway, when you take HRT, there's a bunch of different ways to take it. It could be like patches, it could be injections, but they usually start you off with it orally, right? And it's a lot better and a lot more efficient if instead of swallowing the estradiol, instead you put it under your tongue, so it's absorbed by like directly into your bloodstream, right?
Oh, nice.
So it's supposed to sit under your tongue until it dissolves. However, for some people like me, whenever we do that, we just make a fuck ton of saliva, so we end up like swallowing it anyway, basically, because it just dissolves and then we drink our saliva. So what you're supposed to do, or one alternative, is that you put it between your teeth and your cheek, right? You sort of tuck it in there until, it all gets absorbed, right? So basically, every morning, I walk around with, like, a pill of estradiol in front of my front teeth, but like, in my lower lip, between my teeth and my upper lip. So it's basically like I'm doing estradiol dip, is what I'm trying to get at.
It sounds like you're chewing dip.
It's exactly like chewing dip. And I wonder, actually, only so much of it actually gets absorbed, because some of it gets dissolved by saliva, and I do drink that. even if there's less. So like probably a better way for me to get it directly into my bloodstream is if I like crush the estradiol and then like put it into some dip. Because the dip has like little pieces of the glass or whatever, so you get little cuts, right?
Yeah.
And so it absorbs. So I would get nicotine and estradiol at the same time, and I think that's a win-win. So that might be the next thing I do.
Yeah, that like sounds like a cocktail that you know you would get at a party. But I wonder would they sell more vials of dip, because you know, of course, I don't know who's out here really buying dip. That seems like such a baseball game thing to do.
It's a southern thing sometimes, like a white trash kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, you have a big old lip, you know, you shove the dip in it. But I wonder, would it sell more if it did have like bits of estradiol in there?
I think there would be a market for it. I think there's a lot of southern femboys that you know,
need their fix.
They need to be, well, yeah, they need their fix, and they, you know, they can't come out to their family, but if they're seen as, you know, chewing dip, they're also, you know, being cool to their family and stuff, right? So like it sort of balances out. Like you keep the self-image of being masculine while also actually feminizing yourself. So I think that,
and you still get the beautiful brown dip teeth.
Exactly. That every trans girl needs. So this week's episode sponsored by the tobacco industry. You're welcome.
Yep, sponsored by Dip. Dip, you know you want some.
What a great tagline. You know, I bet that actually has been used by some company.
Oh, probably. Yeah, have you heard that apparently they're taking menthol cigarettes off of the market? Yeah, because that was the big issue that we needed. We needed more bans on stuff. Yeah. Appreciate that. You know, after they raised up the age from 18 to 21, and you know, after they stopped letting Juul sell a whole bunch of fruity flavors, the next issue is not just, you know, the sheer amount of people of the younger generation taking in vast amounts of nicotine that definitely ruins their system and brain chemistry, but it's those older, pesky menthol cigarettes. Yeah. Truly. Which I guess, you know, so it creates crystals in your in your lungs. I get that. I mean, that's kind of cool, to be honest. Cool. The crystals like aspect, not the smoking cigarettes aspect. Yeah, I mean, hey, a lot of these a lot of these liberals love their crystals, you know, topaz and jasmine. What if you had them in your lungs? You carried around those good vibes. So I think that's a win. And, you know, maybe you can get like a opal cigarettes, so you start growing opals on the like inside, you know, for good luck. Well, you know, diamonds are flammable, so. Really? Yeah, because they're made of carbon. I have no idea how flammable they are, but there's a reason that they use lasers to cut them, is because it actually burns fairly easy, if I recall correctly. So I can take a lighter and set a diamond on fire? Is that what you're telling me? I don't know if it works like that, but if you put it in like a furnace, it'll fuck it up, I think. I don't know. The point is that it's made of carbon. That's all I know, really. Yeah. Which is the same thing as coal, if y'all didn't know. Yeah. Honestly, I would like, okay, even though it would definitely kill me, right? I think if I could get a hold of like a cup of liquid diamond, I might have to drink that. That's what? Because like, have you ever wanted to like eat or drink something that you know you shouldn't? I guess that's true. I've said before, I would really love if I had like that superpower just to eat anything, because I feel like the texture of just like, you know, like a game controller, that plastic, you know, I feel like there would be something really satisfying if you bit into that and it just kind of gave way, you know? Yeah. As a kid, I like always wanted to like break open like 10 of those like old time thermometers and like gather all of those like tiny mercury balls, and then just like put those in my mouth. Yeah. And, like,
I feel like,
them around.
They would melt in your mouth, literally.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah.
That's also like how more than a dozen or something Chinese emperors died. So
what?
Yeah,
they would just eat mercury.
Yeah, well, because mercury is one of the elements of like eternity or something. Like a metal. Sure. It's same thing with gold, and so. They would eat lot of the elixirs to eternal life had mercury in them, and then they would die because it's bad for you. So it happened a lot.
What a catch-22.
A lot. Like I can recall 3 specific examples, and I'm sure there were more. And although one of them was kind of embarrassing, I mean, in a haha kind of way. Where they were actually mercury suppositories.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I killed them.
I mean, fool me once, right?
Uh-huh.
But after the first emperor died, wouldn't you think they would like investigate as to why?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, he died right after he drank this elixir to eternal life.
Well, I think they did figure out that elixir to eternal life was not something that worked. However, I don't think they realized that it was the mercury that was. I mean, it also was some of the other stuff they put in there. I don't remember what the other ones are, but yeah, they're not all good. So yeah, well, actually, one of them literally caused a collapse of an empire. The Qin dynasty just totally fell apart because the emperor died. And then we got the Han dynasty, which is sort of like the golden age. I guess it was kind of good.
Hey. Yeah, maybe. Ooh, maybe. What if it was a time traveler who went back in time and killed the leader of the Qin dynasty, knowing that the Han dynasty would create so much great art. And he did it by putting mercury in these elixirs to eternal life. That, if he hadn't have put that stuff in there, would have actually given these emperors eternal life.
You got a good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask someone in the future. All right, let's get into the actual episode. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. So, this episode is another great, fantastic, do the right thing episode. Of course, as we said, every other week in this month. This month's theme is villains. So we're going to talk about and read really great stories that involve villains.
I don't know what you mean every other week, but yeah.
Well, every week of the year. Every week, yes. I guess
that is the term.
Yes, you were right, as always. But the words for this week that our wonderful listeners used to write fantastic stories were bundle, chip, joke, and champion.
That's right, and there were some wonderful stories. I'm thinking of reading Blari 345's story.
Sure. This fantastic story we will be reading and talking about this week is by Blari 345 with... Come on.
No, you're fine.
Come on, baby.
We're already cutting it. It's not a big deal if there's a big pause or a small pause.
I know. With a fate written.
All right, I'll get into it. I looked up at the stars as I grasped the last handhold and finally pulled myself onto flat ground, the small, chipped rock I was carrying digging into my palm. The rock and ice under my fingers was burning cold, even worse than the thin, bitter air that blew ceaselessly at the top of the mountain. The top was about the area of 12 tables and slightly angled. Pushing against the wind, I crossed to the upper edge and looked out at the clouds below and the mountain peaks jutting through them, glowing faintly from the stars far above. The stars, Countless generations of people had looked to them for meaning, trying to know themselves, to know others, sometimes looking for the present or past, but mostly looking to the future, trying to see what was to come. Their destiny, their fate. It was pointless. I knew the sky was empty of meaning. It was impossible to predict the future, to see your fate. The stars were just distant, burning balls of gas. The only meaning was what we put there ourselves. Taking the stone that I had taken from lower on the mountain, I pressed a smear of dried blood onto a scrap of paper against the rock. It stuck instantly in the cold. Smiling, I reached up to the sky, rock cupped in my hand, fingers splayed pointing upward, the stone resting at the base of both of my palms. Altan of Leonava, with your name and blood you are known to me, I proclaimed. I breathed in, the air biting deeply in my chest. You have tried to entrap me, to end my existence. By doing this, you have wronged me and those beholden to me. Looking up, I saw the constellations that men had traced across the sky and picked the ones I wanted. I call on the Mare of Discord. May all you attempt come to chaos and ruin. Dane, whose blade separates life from death, may yours find you soon. Finally, I call on the arrow of Leaf, the champion. May this fate come to pass swift and true. Stretching up with eyes closed, reaching as far as I could, I almost touched the stars. I did touch them, like a ghost of a spider web. I pulled down, opened my eyes, and saw the barest glimmer, as with more instinct than thought. As with more instinct than thought, I bundled them about the rock and blood. Pressing my hands together, I focused, pressing power through everything, binding it together. The stars were empty of everything but the belief and power we invested in them. A blank slate where fate could be written by any who knew how, though few did this anymore. I smiled again, deeper this time, as I placed the bound fate into a small cleft in the mountain top. Altan would rue the day that he crossed me.
All right. Yeah, this is a really great story. I mean, I love these prose, like they have this strong mystical tone to them, along with being really deep in this imagery that's half abstract, but it's sort of half very ritualistic, and you can tell that it's a part of this grander spell that this main character is grasping and casting, and I do really love that like last line that kind of really colors the rest of it, because at first you're getting this sense of it might be this sort of like pure mystical thing, but then by the very end you realize, oh, this is done in spite, this is done in revenge, and it kind of paints the rest of the story in that same light, to where when we go back and maybe read it for the second time, we get a totally different reading of it. We get a more sinister fear, whereas first we would have gotten this sort of mystical purist feel to it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I just thought it was really great. I do feel that even though this main character, like, we don't really get a lot of this character, we do get enough of these actions that it does speak to a wider world, and sort of maybe where this character could possibly fit in. So yeah, really, really great.
Yeah, I do really love the prose, as you said. I will say there's definitely, as another commentator pointed out and gave some examples, so thanks Matt Sidwards for that. But this could use some more punctuation and stuff, not necessarily just because grammatically incorrect or whatever, but specifically because adding distinct punctuation makes words flow a bit better. I basically, as I was reading, I was sort of adding it in subconsciously in my reading, but in the actual text, having those pauses and distinct, like, ends of sentences, starting a new sentence, I think makes those things flow better. But some of the imagery that's described here, like specifically the reaching towards the sky and sort of pulling back a what was it called? A ghost of a spider web. Excellent, absolutely excellent. Because I can truly feel how light of a touch that is, and picture those stars being drawn down like that. So that was excellent imagery. I loved it.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I'm just like really sort of entrapped with like the description of these movements, like even though we aren't getting the most specific movements, we get enough to where we can fill in the blanks of the sort of elegance that this spell really does take. And I think that really comes across very well. And I mean, even though this story is, I would say, missing that character, like,
and I want to talk about that. I have specific.
Yeah. And I mean, even though it is sort of missing that right now, I think that this is still a really great scene filled with this action, right? To where if this story was to go on longer, or like even if we were to get more lead up in the beginning, this would still be that drawing point for us. I think it's accomplished really well. Yeah,
I think specifically how this could be improved is, you're right that sort of the character and emotion and motivation, I think was lacking. But I think it's kind of like there's just straight up like a hole in it. So it'd actually be very easy to slot something in, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So I think like the paragraph where he's where the main character is talking about who they're cursing, and at the very end, I think just changing that into something more personal and with a stronger feeling, I think that's all you need. So, and there's a lot of options where that could be, but any sort of like very strong conflict, and I would recommend even just something simple and almost cliche. I think because those cliches are like, I mean, they're common for a reason, because they're common human experiences. Maybe this main character is cursing their father, right, or their brother, or an ex-lover, right, or someone that stole their lover from them, something like that, where it's like this viscerally, it's something about betrayal, right? I think would truly make a lot of this hit, right, of why they've climbed a mountain. And I think also bringing out some more emotion and some of the visceralness of this ritual. They climbed a mountain, that's one thing. So describing of them being exhausted, and that like that rage has like powered them getting up here, or that bitterness alone. And then the dried blood, maybe they have to cut themselves for it, or they did cut themselves, or whatever else. And they've clearly, they're putting a ton of effort into this, and I just want to get that feeling of why.
Yeah, really. I mean, I'm going to go back to that last line, right? Like, that last line gave this story that purpose that we were really talking about, It gave us a reason as to why this is happening. And I feel that it's good that that's the point, right? But the essence of that last statement, Alton will rue this day. I think instead of even saying that, taking that feeling and sprinkling it throughout to where they're maybe not even naming this other person, but actually, with each movement,
that's definitely it. To not name them, make it more universal that way.
Yeah, and with each movement, we can get the reason for that movement and how that links back to this main character. So when they reach up to the stars, are they reaching up with a strong fist, an angry fist? Even though it is this sort of light touch, what is the feeling behind that touch? And I think really showing that depth can only make this really great scene even better, because like as is, it's really solid. And as we keep saying, the only thing that's missing that grasping grip really is the intention. If we know why these movements are important before they happen, then we are more able to really retain what is really happening here, so that instead of us feeling like, oh, that is nice, we feel like, oof, that's gonna do this, and like, oh, him grasping up to the stars is him calling this power for this and that. Wow, Alton is really gonna rue the day that he crossed this character, without even the story itself telling us this. Of course, going back, show not tell. Show us these feelings behind these movements, so you don't feel the need to tell us at the very end.
I think show versus tell, or I think adding those things in and showing them, I think, is definitely the right way. I think also, if you were just to like, another example of what that last line could be is just instead of he'll rue the day, which is just kind of a statement of this is an act of revenge rather than anything else. Changing that to something, and again, keeping the name out of it, so it's still more like universal. Even just pronouns, I think, is all you need sometimes. Or just a normal noun like brother, right? Or whatever. But if you had it like, he would rue the day he took her from me, right? Or something like that. I think that's even enough to really add in that hint of that feeling of betrayal and things like that.
Yeah, definitely something that's just giving us more in that last line, because this is the punctuation to this really great prose that you're building, right? So how you end it is just as important as how you begin it and how it follows through. Like when you hit that baseball bat, it's about the wind up, but it's about following through and hitting it on its mark. And I think that this story has a great wind up and it has a solid follow through. I just feel adding those extra bits will put more power behind this swing, so you can get that home run.
That's a very strong sports ball metaphor. I love it.
Thank you. I don't watch any sports ball.
Me neither. For another thing that I do really like the as one commenter, I think Nick, you mentioned the philosophizing. I quite like it. There's a really good flow to it. The part talking about how the only meaning in the stars is that we put them that we put there ourselves. I think that's really, really good. I think good. And you don't have to turn into a longer story. It's just a common thing, but that's I think even exploring that further of talking about constellations or whatever, I think that's a great example of how we put more meaning into them. And I really like how it's literalized in this, putting that meaning into the stars of this sort of curse. I liked it. It's cool. I think that is all I have for this story. But thank you so much for sending it in, Blari345. That was a fate written. And yeah,
great story. Please great feeling.
Continue sending in stories. We appreciate that you started joining us. We appreciate you joining us a while ago. That's what I meant to say. And thanks for continuing to write with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for writing in and allowing us to read this really strong story. But all right, I think it's high time to roll on into the bulk of this podcast, which is the listener submitted stories section. So, thank you so much to the stories we are going to be talking about this week, which are Stuck in Reddit Factory, Jarby Jazz, Nick U, Matt Said Words, and Excalibur. Thank you so much for allowing us to talk about your stories. And the first story we are going to be talking about this week is by Stuck in Reddit Factory with their story.
which was a close submission. If we had started in the morning, it might not have made it in. So
yeah,
close call. But sorry, I don't mean to call out anyone specifically. For the record, if I was submitting stories to Do the Right Thing, I definitely would be doing them like last the minute. Hour of recording for sure.
Yeah, maybe even posting it after we record.
That is kind of literally what we've done a lot of the time to literally write the story right before we recorded. In fact, like start writing it when we're supposed to be recording, and then delayed a bunch because we weren't done. So
yes.
Anyway. So this story is a cool scene. There's this character Ace at the front door of someone's house. They're holding this package and they're clearly like feeling awkward. The door opens and there's this androgynous person, and Ace is sort of struggling to speak to this person that we sort of understand is a character that is genderqueer in some way. And has like they them pronouns, and according to Ace looks feminine but prefers Mr. and Ace is just unfortunately confused. But they do give a genuine try in their narration to roll with it. So that's good. But then we get into basically the bulk of the conversation where Ace presents this package which had belonged to this person's grandfather. And they basically don't know their grandfather or anything, but the implication is that Ace killed their grandfather in some war in the past and took their things as trophies, and now decades after this war is over, they've come to give it back to a descendant family member, and the person invites them inside to talk about it, and they're clearly like a very chill and cool person, and I don't know, it seems like it'll be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, yeah, this is a very interesting story. I like both of these characters. I think that their dialogue is really individual. You know, you can definitely tell who is talking even without these little tags to like let you know. You know, and I think that's just a testament to how this dialogue is pretty well written. And I do like in the beginning how this main character is trying to grapple with this other person's pronouns is telling us a bit about this like main character, maybe even how they view things, right? And you know, I just really like that moment, and I think as a writer, it is sometimes, I guess, hard to let your main character be wrong or not be completely right in a certain aspect. So I did like how that is being portrayed here, and I do like how decades later this person is coming back to give up these trophies of war, and I think that's a really nice concept that I haven't really seen too much really. So yeah, overall, I think it's just a really strong story. I know that when they go inside for this tea and or coffee, it'll definitely be a very nice and interesting conversation. So overall, really great job.
Yeah, I do really like the character that shows through in the receiver's language, especially like at the end there. Their dialogue of, well, Ace, this sounds very important to an old champion of war like yourself. Can't say I really knew the guy. Died when I was 6, see? Come on in, I'll make you a cup of tea. You can tell me all about how you killed my grandfather and took his stuff as a war trophy. It's great. I loved it. Yeah. Nice and snappy.
Very cute.
I think there was a little bit of confusion for me when we were first introduced to this character, because I didn't realize what the confusion was coming from. And then there was also some dialogue where the tag was unusual just because, like, when the person shows up, they go, oh, hello there, guy? And then there's she, ... no, he, ? said. And I think I just, like, had trouble reading that in flow, which I totally understand. I mean, that's his thought process, and I think it's well conveyed through this, like, breaking from normal grammar and stuff, and I think that's cool. I wonder if, like, italicizing it would have been better or not,
maybe.
Because
or like maybe priming the audience on this sort of stuck in this main character's head stream of
there's a bit
consciousness flow that bleeds over in to the prose, you know?
Yeah, there's a little bit before it. The second paragraph starts off with an icebreaker, question mark, no comma, no jokes. So it is there. I think when it was just... I think I just ended up being confused a little bit. And maybe it's just me reading it while I was tired. And so probably you'd want to get feedback from one or two other people before actually changing things. But... and I'm not entirely sure how to change that, to be honest. So I don't know if I'm doing my job really well, but how to change it while still keeping the what it is, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure.
Well, I would honestly, I would say that if this aspect of the prose, it being within this main character's head, who does sort of go back and forth on what to say next and what to think next, maybe having that be longer sections to where we get more from this main character, to where we can understand that this is their thought process and how it is working within the prose. By doing that, I feel that those moments would have less confusion because the audience is well aware that this is how this story is being written and this is how it's going to unfold, you know? Sure.
Yeah, I'm just I don't want them to think that they have to put in that much more, because it's there's already a bit, you know? True. And I'm not entirely sure how to balance it. And I think maybe another solution would just be to add more dialogue tags through that little dialogue, just because the first one was a little confusing and then the other ones don't have it. Normally that's fine because you've already established it, but because the first one was a little confusing, I stumbled and I was confused. So maybe just the next dialogue she says, which is just, oh my god, I'm misgendering this character that doesn't, what the fuck? God, I fucking hate the English language.
Live long enough to become the villain.
I know, yeah. Anyway, this character, their next line is just that they want to be referred to as Mr. So this is another way of just... Anyway, having the dialogue tag of the person in the doorway said or something like that, as opposed to Ace. Anyway, that's what I have to say about the story.
Yeah, but either way, really, really great story, and I think, maybe going back to this and working on it further can really iron out those bits, but really create even a better story. So really great job, Stuck in Reddit Factory. Mm-hmm. And up next is by Jarby Jazz with A Perfectly Ordinary Hole in the Floor,
which is a fun title. This is a continuation of the series with SD and this police chief, and they're finding necromancers and such. They've just broken into a barn where they think there's some necromancy, and the captain, sorry, not chief, hands SD a knife to prepare for a fight. They get in there, they find this necromancer who is working on bringing a dead horse back to life, and Captain Harris says, "You're under arrest." She protests and says, "Why would I be under arrest? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm bringing a horse back to life, but it's just to do, farm work. It's not actually a monster, that actually kills people." And Captain Harris is just so upset by someone bringing things back from the dead, and that, knowing that it's inevitably going to lead to people dying or connecting it to the process, he decides to attack her right now and put her down. And Essie this whole time is sort of actually thinking, this is not such a bad idea to do some necromancy this way. I don't know if I agree, Captain Harris. And then that the scene ends where that fight starts.
Yeah, so I really do like this section of this story. Leading up to this point, both of these characters have definitely been on the same page. So I think this is definitely that moment where this buddy cop duo sort of diverges, to where now they might both have different views on the same situation, right? So I think, yeah, this is a really nice change in this story. And I know that was something that we were really talking about last time, on how like a story like this does need to evolve to not only stay at some point, not only to stay interesting, but to also sort of continue this story to where we're not staying in the same limbo, right? So I really like the function of this piece within this wider story. Of course, the dialogue is still really strong. The action is still really strong. And yeah, I do like how we are still exploring the functionality of not only this magic, but how this world works. How this police chief is really quick to prosecute someone for doing this magic, even if it is for good reasons, right? So yeah, I just think this definitely does bring up a lot of things. It really does deepen this world, and it does deepen these characters. So yeah, I am definitely looking forward to a future entry, but I think that right now this story is going on a really strong path that is not only different from what it came before, but yeah, it's just improving on what is already good within it.
Yeah, as Ace of Swords says in a comment, I think definitely Harris is like going a little too strong here. I think if it was rewritten to, instead of being I need to kill you right now, to just I need to bring you into custody. It doesn't matter what you're doing; it's still wrong, and it doesn't matter if it's doing good. Yeah, I need to bring you into custody. I think that's all the edits you have to do really to make this more in line with like the character and believable. I mean, Driver Jazz talks about how they wrote it at 11 p.m. when they have work at 5 a.m.
Smart.
And, yeah, so it's totally understandable that they probably took some shortcuts and in their thought process and stuff. Also, I mean, I think it's really cool that you took the time to write a story when you didn't have that much time. I think that's really good for you, and thank you. So, I think also making the necromancer more aware that it's seen as wrong, I think also might help. Because Esty is very much a like kind of person that's like, I don't understand why people think that bodies are gross, you know? So we kind of already have that character. And I think having a sort of this isn't what it looks like kind of thing going on, I think is a very good way to have this sort of like, this is a misunderstanding, and then the cop being like, no, it's not, you gotta go to jail right now, you know? So just some options to think about. And then maybe there's a reason that this necromancer has to stay out of jail. You know, maybe if they go to jail, another rival flesh crafter is going to execute them or whatever. So just some options. But I really like what you wrote here, and I think this is a good thing to be trying out.
Yeah, very much so. I think definitely adding that agency within this necromancer can really make this scene. I would almost liken it to when a bootlegger gets caught. You know, how they know what they're doing is bad, but what they're actually doing is not that bad, you know. So it's that very middle ground place, and I think if this scene really did operate within that gray area, we would, as a reader, be able to both align with SD and this cop character. But yeah, overall, really great job, and I'm looking forward to what you come up with next.
Yep. What's the next story?
Yep. So the next one is by Nick Yu with Fly.
So basically, we have this main character named Fly, flying to confront this other sort of superhero named Chevalier, who had attacked members of Fly's group, who had apparently, as we discover in their conversation, about to sort of do an initiation ritual that involved cannibalism, I think, of humans or something. So as we get, so basically they start talking in the air, but basically getting ready for a fight before it eventually does break into a fight. But before then, they sort of go back and forth about the politics, where Chevalier is sort of naive, but she believes that these superpowered chimeras or whatever they are need to work with humans, while I think there's multiple super tribes of chimeras, and one of them is closer to the humans, which is where Chevalier's from, and the rest are against them and want to stay away from them. And basically, Chevalier is messing with their internal politics, and maybe will cause a civil war between the super tribes just because she doesn't want the humans to be mad at them. And it's cool to have that sort of back and forth. It seems like neither of them is entirely right, but neither... Mm-hmm. I mean, Chevalier's probably a little bit more right, but also in a naive way. And I like how pissed off the main character is, how vitriolic he is about it. I think it comes across really well and believable, of how he just like hates this child for messing with things beyond her understanding. And basically they get into a fight, and he really like messes her up, but leaves her to live in the end.
Yeah. So I really do like this story. I mean, it's definitely ripe with this world building. I like the separate tribes, and I like how they sort of sit closer to humans versus very distant. And yeah, I really do like the section about how they're just talking politics, and how you can definitely see how both of them believe within their own goals, you know. It feels very grounded, right? And it definitely does explain why this fight has to happen. So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the drawing point of this for me. It's just building this sort of wider world, you know, slowly, while still giving us pretty solid characters. So overall, yeah, I just really like this piece, and yeah, I would just love to maybe see more from this world, or just, you know, a deeper depth within this world building, because it's very interesting. Mm-hmm. So really great job, Nick, to you.
Yeah, I like this history of this sort of like cultural traumatic event involving a sewer prince that basically mind controlled all of them, made them like slaughter humans, and then when the sewer prince died, they sort of just had to deal with the aftermath, and basically were slaughtered in turn, even though they didn't actually have agency. And how they're all kind of dealing with that in different ways. I think that's really interesting.
But yeah, really great job, and thank you so much for submitting.
Mm-hmm.
And up next is by Matt Said Words with The Emperor of Ice Cream.
So finally, we get a full rundown of that poem. Finally. We really appreciate that Matt Said Words. Sorry for our terrible confusion about this poem, and I do appreciate it. This is a continuation of that series about the murder on Mars and the sort of back and forth politics. And this one takes place mostly in the perspective of the Mars AI, basically the Olympus Mons AI, or OMA, I think is OMI. So it's a super intelligent AI, like how it's described. And basically, we go through different scenes where it sort of understands, or different scenes with other characters that we already know, or related to them, basically as they progress the plot a bit more. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but basically, yeah, we get a bit further of, in more complications arising of this like report of this murder maybe being passed on to the president, who is the one that did the murder, so maybe he like knows about it. And every of these sections starts off with a bit of poetry that I think is sort of related to the scene, or at least as a whole does. We see that the OMI is sort of beginning to understand what's going on, even though it's like not a human AI. It's very much like a problem-solving kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We see another scene where the president dumps the body of the guy he murdered into the water supply, which is extremely limited, which is like, God damn it. And then the final scene that we get is one of the other characters that we had before, Beryl, splashing her face, wasting water just to feel okay. She drinks some water, and it tastes like blood. Which is just like, oof. Oh my god, this is terrible. And that's the end of Act 1.
Yeah, so I think that this definitely does not only give us a lot of information about this world, but it still does progress this story, which I think was a really nice balance struck. I really do love the beginning and the description of this AI, how its data is built up, making it its eyes, and like how every piece of like tech is being added to it to make it greater. I just think it's a really nice image that's being built there. And I think that the addition of these poetic sentences is really nice, and I think most of them do line up very well with what is being said within that section. I do feel that there are a few moments where it doesn't fully line up, and it's really hard to see how that sentence has relation to the story that we are reading. But I think definitely going back and just like looking at it again and making sure that these lines are purposeful and not just for flair can really fix up that personal confusion that I saw in it. But I mean, overall, really great. It is pushing this story forward while also just really giving us great depth as to where this world started and like where it's going, and just the trajectory of this story. So really great job, Matt said words. Really like this one.
Yeah, I like the perspective of the AI. I like how it is very intelligent, but it's also is not intelligent in the human way. So I like that it was both like very powerful and limited, which is a perspective that we only see some of the time. And also the blood being found in the water is quite a moment.
That's fun.
And also, I totally understand why you are taking a break from the story, as you've been doing it for a while. That is extremely valid. And I mean, if you don't want to eventually return to the story, that's totally fine. But I think it's a cool one. So
yeah, but I have found that sometimes to make a story better, you really do have to step away from it and let it breathe. Let your mind breathe, and then when you come back to it, you will have those new eyes to where you can truly see where the weak points of it are. So yeah, stepping away from a piece is just as valid and just as beneficial as working on it day in and day out. So do you. Well, all right. Our last story for this week is by Excalibur, with an untitled story. I guess poem.
Yeah, it's a short poem, which they formatted in a table, which is I think it's cool.
Yeah.
There's it uses a lot of alliteration. Basically, it's about it's. Should I just read it, because it is? I mean, it's short enough to just read.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just read it. Their poem was: "The crude chips are callously carved from a champion's wary and waning will, warily charged with warding. They bear witness to wet barbarity. My bloody prize, born to a bundle of like tokens, taken listlessly." So it seems to me about some sort of conflict, and basically like the reward not being worth the conflict. That's sort of how I'm taking it. I think I definitely should have done more analysis before we started recording, and I apologize for that, Excalibur. But I think there's probably multiple ways to get meaning from this, which is really the best thing of a poem. So I think that's really good. The emphasis here, I think, is on alliteration, which I think is definitely a good way to add meaning into a poem and sort of create connections between different, in the same way that rhyming sort of became, it's not just like for flow, it's also to connect different concepts together generally. And I think there's definitely some use of alliteration to that same purpose.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this poem is, of course, pretty tight. I do like how this central conflict throughout this poem, we see how this conflict has tired out this champion, and how even though the reward seems very bountiful, it, as you said, doesn't measure up to the effort that was put into this barbaricism, right? And of course, I think that there are different ways to really read this poem. There are different settings that you could possibly put this in, whether it's a real fight, whether it's a metaphorical fight. I just think that this poem does feel quite universal, and yeah, I just think it's a really solid piece. It really does hit home on that alliteration, and yeah, it was a really fun read. So thank you very much, Excalibur, for giving us a very interesting piece this week.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at some of the comments of people offering interpretation and Excalibur actually giving their own interpretation, which theirs was formed after composition. So I think that's really cool that they wrote this poem not kind of knowing what it was supposed to be about, which I think is that sounds like a not good thing, but I think it is and can be a totally good thing. I mean, poetry is about feeling a lot of the time, and the interpretation is kind of what matters more than anything else. So if you can get meaning from it, then you succeeded, But they say that their own interpretation was that there was a physically strong person being attacked in a non-physical way that prompted them to defend their attacker and gave the attacker a chance to do more. The attacker is a person that does not particularly care about the process of destroying this victim. And they did also Matt said Word's interpretation that the strong person and the attacker are one and the same. Which I think those are some really cool interpretations, and I can see how those are in there.
Yeah, but thank you so much for submitting your story. And all right, that's all of the listener submitted stories for this week. Thank you so much for submitting your story, and we would like to give a big old do the right thing thank you to everyone who did submit their story. So, thank you very much to Stuck in Reddit Factory.
And thank you so much to Ace of Sword.
Thank you, Jarby Jazz.
Thank you, Glittering Coast. Who was the... Well, actually, is that something I should call out? I don't know.
I don't know.
That they said that they didn't want to read it on the podcast. I don't know. I just kind of appreciate that someone did it.
Yeah.
Kind of broke the ice on that. So, I thought it was a good story. So, I guess I just want to say that just because it's not being read on the podcast does not mean that it was not a good story. I do wonder if we should have, if we should assume that people who don't want their story read on the podcast don't want it talked about on the podcast. That's probably not necessary, right? Because
because...
Which is not the reason that we didn't read the Glittering Coast story. That is just we just wanted to read 5.
A draw,
Talk about 5, I mean.
But yeah, I'm assuming that if they don't want it to be read on the podcast, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want it to be talked about.
Yeah, I feel like
but I don't know, yeah.
If they've posted it, they probably do want us to talk about it. I don't think there's been a single person that said don't talk about this on the podcast before. So yeah. But anyway, so I guess that's fair next time. But anyway, we appreciate you sending in your story, Glittering Coast, even if you didn't feel that you wanted it to be read. I am still glad to have read it, but not out loud.
Exactly. And anyway. also thank you to Nick to you.
Thank you to Matt Said Words.
And thank you to Blari345.
And lastly, thank you for joining us, Excalibur_.
Yes, thank you so much. And of course, we like to say
I kind of like that. Sorry, I kind of like that as an epithet name. What's the other one? My name is Excalibur. underscore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Esquire. That's the one.
Esquire.
I have no idea what Esquire means.
It is. I think it's the official like position term for someone who is a lawyer. I think.
Huh. Well.
I think so.
TIL.
And yeah, also we would like to say thank you to everyone who left a comment. Leaving a comment not only under your own story but under someone else's story not only compiles all of your own thoughts so that everyone can see how you feel about your own story, but you are also providing someone else with great feedback that can only aid them in making their piece better. So thank you very much to Matt Said Words, Nick U, Glittering Coast, and Jarby Jazz. Thank you so much for leaving comments.
Yeah, we always really, really appreciate that. If you want to be like all these wonderful writers and commenters, you can go to /r/do-the-right-thing and write your story. All you have to do is set a 30-minute timer and use 3 of the 4 words said at the end of the podcast.
Exactly. And if you want to hear next week's words as soon as possible, you can do that by following us on Twitter at RightThingCast. We post once a week with all of the great words with just enough time for you to get your story in. And remember, we are now recording the podcast on Tuesdays. So thankfully, you should have the entire weekend and Monday to get your story in.
That's right. Yeah, make sure to get it in by Monday night to be guaranteed that you'll be on the podcast. If you do submit Tuesday, if it's early in our day, which is we live in Texas, so that time zone, then
the Texas one.
Yeah, in Texas time. I feel like Texas could totally have a time zone just to itself. That's the kind of state that we are. Anyway, so long as it is somewhat in the morning, you're likely to be on, but it does get riskier as the hours go by. So,
yeah. And if you want to support us and everything else in Doof Media, you can do that by donating to the Doof Media Patreon. All you have to do is donate $5 or more per month to be able to vote in all upcoming Doof events, and by donating $10 or more per month, you'll get exclusive exclusive access to exclusive bonus content, including the latest episode of Doof Over and Do the Right Thing After Dark.
That's right. That's a new thing that we're going to be doing where we post some of the talk that we have before our podcast. I think we might put out our first one this week. No guarantee, but I think it was good enough.
Yeah, it was decent.
Regardless, there's always so much else going on at Doof Media. There was also a Doof and Chill, which is available at the $5 level, this last weekend where I believe it was Matt, Ruben, Elliot, and it was one of the Pale in Comparison folk. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't remember which one was on. Oh no, I'm very, very sorry. But one of them was on, and it was really, really cool seeing how she interacts with everyone else in a strange video game context, which was I forget the name of it, but it was basically a game where you have to stressfully build a train track as a train goes across it. So it's a fun little game. And the next month, where Jenny and Malia will have basically a get to know you session later this month. The day is on the calendar. But most importantly, the last thing I want to mention is that both the Doof Book Club and the Doof Game Club are this the end of this week, so that's really, really cool. The game club will be on Doom, actually. I don't know if you knew that, Jarvis.
Oh, nice. The new Doom?
I think it is the 2016 one, but I think Elliot is playing all of the Dooms. So,
okay.
not all of them.
Doom soundtrack. Oof.
Yeah, it's really good. I started playing it too recently. So it's been a lot of fun. And if you haven't played
it's really good. What's your favorite weapon
so
far?
The energy gun, the submachine gun, basically, that one.
Okay, yeah.
It just does so much damage. It runs out of ammo fairly quickly, but it's a lot of damage.
Yeah, that is why I'm a huge fan of the shotgun with that like charge shot. Oof.
Wait,
blow through everything.
Oh, I guess I haven't used the charged normal shotgun. I've used the explosive one, but I haven't done the normal one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully, Doom is a perfectly built game to where you can pretty much use any weapon to a good amount.
Yeah, some of them I
besides the pistol.
I don't like some of them. Yeah, I don't understand the pistol. I was meaning to ask people in the Discord if it's viable at all in any way, but
the pistol is great when you run out of all of your ammo.
Even then, like, I would rather just run until I get ammo. Like, it feels like a waste of time.
I think with the charge shot on the pistol,
it's not awful.
And if you get, it's not awful, and if you get a headshot and maybe like a couple of those, you can pretty much get most enemies. To where, like,
I don't even think
just run
so.
Up and punch them. Well, I mean,
I think you could get like the weaker ones, but not even.
You can get the grunts. You can get the bigger ones, not like the fat guys. No. But like, I would say more than half the pistol is viable. But of course, for the bigger guys, just break out the BFG and just cut them.
Anyway, it's been a lot of fun. The book club, which is, what day is it? The book club which will be on Friday, July 2nd at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, is on Foucault's Pendulum, which I don't know anything about, but it seems really, really cool after reading the summary. Anyway, regardless, that's the cool things going on at Doof Media. And of course, there's always all our other podcasts. If you haven't already, if you have read Pact or are considering read it, you could read it alongside Malia and Jenny as they go through Pact after reading Pale, in Pale in Comparison. They also bring in their mom to comment on Wildbow's story. It's really, really cool.
Nice. Well, all right. I think it's high time to roll on into next week's words.
That's right. Do you want to roll the words? Because I didn't.
I already got them. So, next week's words are scan, net, thoughtful, and burial. And I think this is the last week in June, right? So, does that mean that next week we need a new theme?
I think we'll just do that next episode. I don't want to do that right now.
Cool. So next week will be the very last week of our June prompt, which is villains. So get all of your villainy, cluster it all up, let it fester and boil over, and insert that fiery goo into one last fantastic story all about your favorite villain.
What was the words again? I'm sorry.
Scan, net, thoughtful, and burial.
That's right. So, scan as into, how would you describe that? It's
scan is to survey a scenery, a set of data.
It's usually in a visual sense, but not always.
Not always, because you can do like a body scan, a X-ray scan.
I mean, but those are also visual and some. They involve light, at least, is I guess what I'm trying to get at. Oh, I guess you could do an auditory scan. That would feel weird. Echolocation scan, I could believe. Anyway, to go over a large amount of information, to usually looking for specific things. A net, which is what we use to catch fish.
Yes.
But specifically, it's like a bunch of cords formed in a grid pattern that lets some things through, like water, but not other things. Also,
you can also surf the net.
Yeah, the internet, which is a name for it's named for the internet, but the reason that it's called a net is because it's a metaphor for how it all works, where every single like node is connected to all the other ones, sort of making like a web, like a worldwide web, which is also kind of like a net. You could also have like a basketball net, You got so many options. A burial, which is generally in the context of burying someone that is dead, right? Putting them into the ground and covering it with dirt. But you could also do it with anything else. Yeah. And the last one, thoughtful, which is to...
Full of thought.
Yeah, have shown that you have taken the time to think about something for someone, generally. I think that is generally how we use the term.
Yes. So, Alex, what story are you gonna write next week?
Good question. So I'm gonna scan the net, starting right off for some cool story ideas. I'm gonna look for cool burials on the internet. I'm gonna scan it for burials on the internet, and then I will thoughtfully not write a story about burials on the internet, because that seems like a not kind thing to do. Instead, I will close my laptop.
Okay. Nice. I enjoy that.
Yep, there we go.
So my story next week takes place in the distant future of 3077, where there is no longer this physical, tangible, corporeal dimension of existence, but we are all beyond that. We have transcended physical sensory and have fully connected to the net. Now, we are all just beings of sentience and thought, and based off of how thoughtful one is within their own self-worth and their own existence, decides their power and approval within the wider net. And basically, life is simply about scanning the net for like nodes and comparing and contrasting your existence to theirs. Similar on how you download and upload information. And another aspect of it is when one's sentience has reached its end, whether it be by choice or by being forced out of the net by another net user. They have a proper burial, which is simply turning off the nodes that they acquire and letting that space that they used to contain them go dead and become dead nodes.
I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. It's honestly the world that I hope to live in one day.
Is this another branch of Weekend City?
Oh, yes, it is. This is the fourth city of Weekend City. We have Waif, Weekend, Crawford, and the net.
Yep.
And I think
the net is the right thing to do. Goodbye.
That's the right thing to do.
Bye.
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah.